Hello, welcome to the Land of Confusion. I'm Dave March, the host here of the Ricochet show by members, for members, where we interview members. And here's my co-host, Don.
I'll be played by a sock puppet. This is the pets.com sock puppet right here. God, it was fun. Yeah, hi, greetings. I'm in Silicon Valley, home of the pets.com sock puppet.
Okay. And today we're interviewing...
He'll be accompanying me with this whole thing.
Okay. Today we're interviewing Bishop Wash, who's like a leaf on the wind, as I recall.
Yeah.
Oh, we could put sock puppet in his square. Could we?
You'd have to send me a picture of it, but yeah, I could do that.
I'm kidding. Yeah. That would work. We'll do that. So welcome, Bishop Wash.
Thank you. Thanks for having
me. This is Thursday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
We're hanging here. I'm in Silicon Valley. This guy is in wherever it ends up being. I don't know.
Yep.
It's in Canada.
Yeah. And you're in New Mexico.
And you're in New Mexico.
That's right. Albuquerque.
And what's the view like right now?
It's beautiful. It's a nice, clear day. Sun's out. Like about 300 out of the 365 days we get sun, so pretty about 50 some degrees too. Nice.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So we're just going over your bio here. It said that you were unhappy with your life at the way things were going with your life. You were 29 at the time, and it was a certain fateful time, and you decided to leave whatever you were doing at that time. What were you doing at that time?
Well, so I got a degree as an aerospace engineer and was working at a small maintenance modification group at outside of Wichita, and it was a pretty cool job. I mean, we were modifying little aircraft, doing some work, but just wasn't quite sure what was going on, and hit 29. I thought, wow, maybe I should do something else, and kind of got that bug, like maybe I should serve my country before I get too old and they tell me no. So just went ahead and called a recruiter, and then it's like got the paperwork started, get everything going, and then 6 weeks later was September 11th, which was kind of odd, but I went ahead and pressed on and joined the Air Force a year later.
Okay. Yeah. And what did you do with the Air Force?
They put me to work as an engineer on the acquisition side. So that's, like acquiring stuff, getting all the weapons stuff. We kind of joke that everyone else talks about being on the tip of the spear, near the tip of the spear. And, we kind of joke that we're not even on the spear. We're the ones buying the spear. So it's, not quite as dangerous as everybody else, but it was a good job. And then I was able to get my master's degree through the Air Force in aeronautical engineer or astronautical engineering. And then they sent me to work with small satellites, and I got to be part of a team that we launched a satellite, which was fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are a rocket scientist.
I am.
You should form, you and a few of the other rocket scientists form a group on Ricochet, the Rocket Scientist Club.
It was a small satellite.
Yeah. And
actually, how big? I'm curious. How big is a small satellite?
Well, it's not like the small sats now when they talk about the CubeSats, but it was maybe about 6 to 8 feet tall, and then it has some solar arrays, and once those deployed, might be a little bit taller.
So like a Volkswagen?
It was yeah, probably about that size, maybe a little smaller. It was a research satellite. It was looking into space weather phenomenon.
Wait, space weather phenomenon?
Yeah, like the solar wind comes off the sun. It affects stuff on Earth. so it was trying to actually the name of it was let's see, was it CNOS, which I think it was communication navigation outage forecasting or something like that, and they were looking at scintillation of the atmosphere and how that affects radio signals and GPS signals, and they were trying to get a better handle on it so that they could predict it to give the warfighter a heads up that, hey, maybe your GPS might not work for the next 12 hours or 24 hours, or at least be degraded. But when I got onto the program, it had been sitting for about 5 years because had a couple of issues. They got ready to launch it the first time, and they did a test, and they determined that the solar rays weren't working. They weren't actually they were absorbing power, but they weren't sending it to the spacecraft. So they had to totally rebuild everything. Then there was another issue, I forget what, but when I got onto they had a June 2008 launch date, and there was a conflict, so the program manager was able to push it up for 2 months. So we joked that we launched it 2 months early, 5 years late.
All right.
Not too bad for government work.
Yeah, pretty nice.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so you then...
where were you stationed then?
At that time, I was here at Kirtland in Albuquerque. So this is my second go with Albuquerque.
Oh, nice.
No, it does mention here you were at Camp Cupcake in Qatar.
Yes.
How'd that go?
That's the joke name of the. Yeah. So after doing of the work, I entered a program where they could do cross training to make us an intel officer for a while. And while I was doing an intel tour, I was able to get a deployment, and it's called a camp, or it's not camp, it's Al Udeid Air Base over in Qatar. And actually, when I went over there, it was an undisclosed location. But while I was there, the Secretary of Defense visited us and made an announcement. So we're like, well, it's no longer undisclosed. But it's pretty, it's nowhere near the fight or anything like that. So, and it's pretty comfortable compared to a lot of other deployments. So everybody who goes there jokes and calls it Camp Cupcake.
Yeah, I had a business partner once say to me, "Hey, I'm investing in this coffee shop / art store / like drafting place, and it's in Qatar." And I'm like, "Sorry." You wanted me to invest in what? I mean, the returns were pretty good. It was like 12% on 100 grand. I was like, if I had a bit more control of my finances at that time, I would have gone in on it. But I was just like,
oh yeah,
it was just like the next week Saudi Arabia embargoed the country. I was like, I don't know if this is the best time to invest in a business in Qatar.
Should have invested in Twitter.
Oh yeah. Just lost $5 billion market cap, and like because they decided to cancel a certain person. I sent
I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Well, no, between
Twitter
and Facebook is 52 billion they've lost.
Okay.
I sent a note to my broker today saying, "This is why I told you to divest me of all these stocks 3 months ago." He's like, "Yeah, I can see it." So,
what's the story now? You're no longer in the service, right?
Right, but
And we lost him.
yeah, are you still there, Bishop? Hopefully he'll come back on. He's writing. I'm noticing.
Got separated during some of the Obama.
Oops.
You're breaking up.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
You're breaking up a
Oh,
lot.
no.
Yeah.
I don't know if
We missed the last 30 seconds.
but how to fix that.
Just repeat yourself. That's usually how.
Here.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I separated during the Obama, cutting of the military pretty heavily, but was able to get a civilian job in the Air Force here at Kirtland in the research lab, Air Force Research Lab, supporting the directed energy people.
Mhm.
So been doing that for 5 years now.
Oh, still, okay.
Now, is that where you did the experiment for the vomit comment?
No, that was my first assignment. It was in the research lab, but a different directorate. And we were in the propulsion directorate, and they were looking at thermal management and doing some microgravity experiments, and trying to figure out better ways to cool satellites. And so I got part of the team that we figured out a way to do some spray cooling in microgravity, and so we were able to put together an experiment and get a ride on the NASA's Vomit Comet. And did that 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, yes, curious. Under what conditions do satellites need cooling? Because I thought it's like normally pretty chilly out there.
Well, it is, but there's nothing to to transfer it. So here on Earth, we got the wind that blows on your face, and as you sweat, the water evaporates. But there's nothing in space, so even though it is pretty cold, there's no movement. So they got to figure out a way to radiate the heat, and so heat generates up inside the spacecraft, but there's no way to get it to the outside to radiate off. So that's they do there's heat pumps and different kind of cooling systems to get the, and then some of the times they need to keep things warm. So it's kind of a battle. I was never a thermal management engineer, but I've heard, it's kind of a battle to keep things hot and cold at the same time. So
what's
they were kind of reaching some of the limits. For what?
So I guess the heat comes from electronics being powered?
Yes, yeah. And sometimes they actually include heaters around certain components because they have to run at a certain temperature, but then they don't want to get extra heat. So you got to get rid of the extra heat.
So what powers a satellite?
Thermal management is a big battle.
I guess, is it all just the solar panels?
Solar panels and batteries.
Right.
Depending on where you are in the orbits, you might be behind the Earth in shadow,
right,
and not being able to see the sun. So, they have charged batteries, and then when they're in eclipse, they discharge the batteries.
Ah, got it. Now here on Earth, when we have electronics that dissipates a lot of heat, we use something called a heat sink, which is an aluminum thing. For the rest of you, which is an aluminum contraption with a lot of fins on it, and the idea that any little convection of air will just cool it off. But I guess that's not as useful in space, is it?
No. So they have those big radiator panels on some aircraft or some spacecraft, and move around the heat from the inside, and either through heat pipes or other methods.
Heat pipes, okay. Yeah. Okay, so it goes through heat pipes to some radiator thing on the outside. I would guess. Huh, interesting.
Right.
Okay. So we learned something, you see.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why Don's a great co-host. So when we have the engineering question people on, he can just figure out the great questions to ask.
Yeah, I for one never thought about heat dissipation in space before. It never came up, and it doesn't come up often in my profession.
Yeah, I think GLD3 and some thread a couple of weeks ago, did a whole thing on explaining, trying to keep things hot and cold, because the instruments that he's working on have to be at a certain pretty cold temperature, but yet the bus has to be at a higher thing, and just the whole thermal management thing. So he would know a lot more than I would about how this all goes about.
Interesting. Very cool. So what else we got here?
Yeah, well, we're on Ricochet. So how did you find Ricochet?
I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been through a G file or something. And I was there from the beginning, but I wasn't a paid member. I was one of those freeloaders.
Yep.
And then I don't know, maybe after 2 or 3 years of Rob haranguing us, I finally was like, yeah, I should chip in something. So I think I joined in 2012 or so.
Yeah, Rob's, and
I didn't
there
really
are jokes about it, but Rob's requests works pretty well. I think he got a lot of people in.
Yep. Well, we were interviewing Scott.
I think so too. Yeah.
We were interviewing Scott a few weeks ago, and he pointed out Rob doesn't even have to make those. Ricochet's doing well enough. Rob doesn't have to make those pitches anymore.
But they were good. I guess they were pretty effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've noticed that they haven't been on the podcast for a year or two at least. It's good.
They should bring them back. I mean,
well, they might have to bring them back if all the certain people flee the platform because they feel they're being not allowed to be heard. Though in the last few weeks, those people have been getting, I can say, those people have been getting to be heard a lot. That Newt Gingrich post on the top feed said everything I wanted to say.
Yeah.
So so let's see. This is Thursday, and the president was just impeached yesterday. It was, right? It seems like only yesterday he was impeached.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty insane. This is I got to make a couple observations here. Number one, it's been getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And the very idea of him being impeached for something he said, just like the last time he was impeached for something he said. First off, just the double impeachment makes the first one kind of worthless. If the first one didn't do anything, it ruins any value of impeachment. And secondly, they're both for something he said, and they lied about it. And there's a transcription, accurate transcription, both times.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's really weird. And so it makes the impeachers look really bad. Really bad. And we're finding out a lot of evidence now that of course we knew it all along, the thing they're complaining about, the assault on the Capitol, was actually done by Antifa and BLM people who have financial connections to the very people who are doing the impeaching.
Not to mention, there's just like the fact that it's coming more and more clear. The Capitol Police were told to stand down by multiple people.
Right.
They were not allowed to protect the Capitol properly. You have like the 7-foot fences surrounding the building. And I've been to DC in the summertime. I'm like, 100 people breaking into the lobby is not the same thing as Kenosha being burnt to the ground.
Right. And but some of them did break in. Some of them went through the windows and broke the windows and such. That's breaking and entering. Yeah. It seems stupid if the doors were open.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the folks who did this, the Antifa and BLM, are financially connected to the Democratic Party. They both share the same funding, the Axe Blue.
Yep.
So, and there's a lot of back and forth money between them. So the very like the last impeachment, where the Democrats impeached Trump for some quid pro quo with the Ukrainian government, which turned out not to be true, that that Biden actually did that. Here, same thing, impeaching him for something it's not true. But in fact, the Democrats did that through the BLM and Antifa. So this is looking crazy. And then on top of that, if this goes to the second stage, I would think it would require those an impeaching team to be required to impeach themselves, because they're the ones responsible for the crime that they're impeaching Trump for.
Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it will be. McConnell has kind of wishy-washy in the last day, but I think he's just going to let it ride it out to the 19th, and they're just not. Donald Trump will be gone after the 20th. If I were Trump, I'd resign within the last 48 hours and let Pence run the last couple days and be like, just to hell with you, I'm resigning. Like,
actually, I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll stay in. And the reason why, at this point, he's got nothing to lose.
Oh yeah,
it's been assured that he will be arrested the moment he leaves office.
By who?
Right? And his family will be, he and his family.
Your country will look like a third world, final stage of the third world trip. They arrest the outgoing president. I mean, like,
it already looks like that.
Yeah, well, okay.
And it will happen. They promised it already. So I think he's got nothing to lose. I think.
Well, that's what they said in 2016 with Hillary.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Joe Biden is definitely is coming in as a return to normalcy. He's definitely not the type of guy to do that. Now, I understand the states guys might try it, but there's definitely, if the Southern District of New York or whatever it is, or some of the states want to file stuff, that's fine. Well, that's going to be okay. Like, but can you imagine the trial of the next president? And it'll make O.J. Simpson / the trials of John Gotti look mild in comparison. It'll be like it'll make them look like idiots.
Dude, that's already the case.
I understand that.
That's already the case. They're going to do it. Just like they're impeaching him twice. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I can't predict. Of course, none of us can predict the future.
Yeah.
I'm just saying things are getting weirder and weirder and weirder.
Oh, as I've said a few times.
And I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As I've said a few times, the strangest things are yet to come.
And yeah, I think, number one, nobody can predict the future. Number two, things are getting pretty damn weird. So there. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it's not going to get normal, that's for sure. So I guess,
I'm curious, what's the coronavirus like down in Albuquerque, New Mexico? Are you guys under full lockdown? Are you like Florida or California? Or New York? How is it like down there?
We're pretty heavily locked down. Our governor has been quite the tyrant through this whole thing, and it's kind of interesting, or I don't know, serendipitous or whatever, that her maiden name rhymes with Wuhan. Her name is Michelle Lujan Grisham. So of course everyone who doesn't like her calls her Wuhan, Michelle Wuhan, or sometimes Karen Wuhan. She locked us down pretty hard and kind of let up a little bit. I don't know, a couple months ago, and we were able to go back to in-restaurant dining, but then something spiked or something. I don't know. I don't really follow that closely anymore, but she just didn't allow us to go back into the restaurant. So these people would, they would do the outdoor patio, but they put up these tents that are fully enclosed, so it's still outdoors. But then just last weekend, some of those places were just back to delivery only. So I guess they kind of saw through that workaround and shut that workaround down.
Well, I mean, like Chicago just is apparently decided to reopen up all the restaurants because suddenly people were having parties at home, like big parties. So they're like, so we got to open up all the restaurants once again because when people went to the restaurants, we could control those conditions. But now they're all drinking and like having 50 people in their condos. Oh, we're kind of screwed.
So over here in Silicon Valley, things are not getting better. I've heard reports that the morgue is full up, that the hospitals are full up, that a buddy of mine had to reschedule surgery because Stanford Hospital is only doing oncology cases. And although, you know, I don't believe any of those reports at this point. I just don't believe the news at all. You can't. And so, I don't know. Although, I will say, I was
stopped even listening.
I gotta proudly say, I was Karened today.
Oh, really?
I go for a morning walk, and of course I don't wear a face diaper because, you know, it's outdoors. And
Yeah.
this annoying woman walks by, and she's, you know, she gets, actually, you know, okay, I love where I live because there are great places to walk and hike and everything. It's just lovely, and suburbs, and there's like just pristine areas around. And so people are normally pretty far apart, but they're all wearing the masks. And so one woman would not pass me, was all worried about me passing on the sidewalk. This is sidewalk with a lot of area around it. And she went, go on the side, just put on your mask. Flipped her off. Nah, you wear two.
I have never had any of those kind of experience. Ontario's pretty good. I don't live in Toronto, so I guess that might be the epicenter of badness around here. But the only time I've ever had a really bad experience is I was walking down the street one day. I saw this little old lady who's clearly face masked coming down the like cross street. So I stopped to let her pass, like give her the 6 feet, and she was completely oblivious, and she literally is not paying any attention and practically walks into me, stops, looks horrified, and then turns around and bends over to not be in my presence. And I'm like, lady, you could have like walked across the street or just like walked around me, but because you couldn't be bothered to pay attention to where you were walking. And that was the only time I've had a really bad experience.
So I think this sort of indicates to us that this is a failure in humanity, I think. You know, I think we've hit upon like a sort of failure where people just can't think or can't deal with reality, both with the COVID and in politics. When they go power hungry, I think these are serious human failings we're seeing.
Yeah. And I think someone, you know, had commented that since now we got all this technology and people can work from home, and it seems like the ones, you know, making the decisions have that luxury, but you know, they forget about everybody else, and that's where a lot of this is failing us.
Yeah.
You know, if these people had to do an actual job, the lockdowns would have ended, you know, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then been over.
2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Oh, that would make a good song. Hold it. Okay, that would make a good song. That is okay. Back in the day when I was growing up, folk music was big, right? And folk music was the political activism of the day, right? Whether Pete Seeger or Bob Dylan or what have you. I think it's time again. 2 weeks to flatten the curve would be a great folk song. You could just
you do have
imagine
a few folk songs about this, actually. Van Morrison has commissioned and created 3 protest songs.
Yeah,
and one of them is about there's several anti-lockdown songs.
Yes, that's right.
So we do have at least one person making an effort, but yeah, 2 weeks to flatten the curve would be certainly.
That is.
So,
So, for instance, the meter of that reminds me of oh boy, Woody, no, not Arlo Guthrie. Pete Seeger, sorry, a Pete Seeger song. He wrote a song about population explosion,
mm,
and the chorus went, "All be a Dublin, a Dublin, a Dublin, all be a Dublin in 32 years," and that was actually used as a public service announcement for a while back in around 1970 or so, and of course it was wrong. It wasn't, the population wasn't growing that fast, but the world population was not.
yeah.
But yeah, that's a sort of thing. Or in 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I like that. That would be good. I always the folk music of the '60s was really cool because it was simple, it was to the point, good way for musicians to make a living, and it got people learning to play guitar, because when you take guitar lessons, you need something to play, and those songs were really playable. It didn't take much effort. You don't have to learn like complicated jazz riffs or anything like that. You learn 3 chords and speak the truth. So, so I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Mm-hmm.
This could work. Yeah. 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Now, Bishop Wash, I'm going to ask you. So I take it you're a Serenity fan, you're a Joss Whedon fan with that name, or is that just something that kind of came up?
Well, I am a fan.
Or
but
are you an actual bishop?
No, I'm not. So that's the thing. I'm a comic book fan, and my favorite comic book character is Rogue out of the X-Men, but that's a girl. So when I was trying to come up with a screen name way back in the early internet days, I really liked, my second favorite X-Man was Bishop. So that's where I pulled Bishop from. So it has nothing to do with religion, or, which is kind of odd sometimes. People call me a high pontiff or something. Like, no, it's a comic book character, not a. But then I don't know, about 10 or so years ago, a friend said, you kind of resemble Wash, Alan Tudyk. So he nicknamed me Wash. So then when I started just kind of merging the two, so that's where Bishop Wash comes from. So,
you should get one of those cool hats.
I do enjoy Firefly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you need the hat.
They got the cool hat.
You gotta. You gotta.
Cool. Yeah, so covered the president. We've covered the any kind of sports you like there, Bishop Wash? I know the hockey's dropping down here soon.
No, I kind of enjoyed like college basketball, but I just kind of tangentially followed football and stuff like that. But the whole Kaepernick thing, I was just like, nope. I wasn't a huge fan to start with, but I just gave it up. And then also getting a daughter, a small child, just didn't have the time to follow that stuff. So I really don't follow sports that much anymore. And then of course this whole year with everything, it's been weird. So I haven't missed it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say that. I was watching some shows down in the States, of course, and one of these internet shows, they were talking about like they're breaking us out of the movie habit. Like now I just have all these friends and we'll just go barbecue in our backyards and just hang out with our kids all the time. We're not going to go back when we're allowed to do normal things again. Will we go back to watching sports events? Will we go back to watching movies? Now, personally, I think we will. I think we're going to do everything we have not been allowed to do the last year and a half, or well, I guess year, but by the time it's done, it'll be a year and a half. By the sound of it.
Yeah.
One of my big.
But I know at least here in Albuquerque. Oh yeah, here in Albuquerque, 2 of the dollar theaters, the second run movie theaters, they closed up in July. Like they couldn't even make it to July, I think it was. And we're coming back, and now do limited reopenings in different states, but New Mexico is not one of them. So we haven't even done some of that limited, like AMC reopening. So yeah, I don't even know if some of those bigger ones are going to be able to make it back.
Well, yeah, movie theaters have had a big problem in the last 10 years or so, right?
Mhm.
Just to begin with, before COVID, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
right, because
yeah.
people have
People going to the home theater.
right, given home theaters are proliferating, you know, that's what the usual
There was
take is
also
in a riot, right?
there's like a year. Before
nothing says justice like grabbing a big screen TV. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I just remember a few years. It was like one year, 2014 or 2013. There was like 8 blockbuster summer movies. Each one of these movies made $1 billion, and Hollywood said suddenly, "Oh, I guess blockbusters are back." So we've been getting these big tentpole movies ever since, but only 1 or 2 of them actually get the money, and all the other ones die. So we've been watching in the recent years. I think. When this is all said and done, they have all the ones they had in the queue. But once those movies are done, all movies are going to go back to be smaller, more modest budget. We're going to see maybe $50 million movies again.
Sure.
Hopefully, we'll see.
But well, actually, I don't know. Well, it's interesting because the technology to produce movies is so much cheaper nowadays, right? The most expensive part is going to be the set, I guess, or the actors.
Yeah, it's usually the talent now.
Yeah, and but the used to be like a big expense was all the film and cameras and all that high end pro quality equipment, but that costs like very little now.
Yep.
And and then all the complicated stuff that might come up, you just CGI it and have some kids do that. So yeah, it's strange. But on the viewer side, right? Theaters have been they first grew to lots of individual little theaters, right, into one building, and then they put in like super deluxe seats to try to be competitive. And now I don't know, recovering is gonna be tough. Yeah, I don't think I don't see that's and so they're trying to get like drive-ins back, right, for COVID. That's it's all very strange. I think it would be tough to be a theater owner, I think, right now.
I was doing a theater right before this, and I'm like, dodge that bullet.
I do think there's a big potential, I may have mentioned this before, for multi-purpose theaters, and you can have a concert or a play or a movie, and single unit theater for concert, play, or movie, or large meeting or something. And I think that would be profitable because all of those individual needs, it could handle them.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think so. Just not yet, when the COVID thing goes by.
Yeah. Fun times. Hopefully we'll be here again. No, I mean, like, we complain about our politicians, but I know some of these people personally, and I'm like just looking at what their decision maker drivers are, and it's like, how could you possibly make these decisions? Why were you doing this? And it's like they're just trusting the guys in the lab coats in a way that we wouldn't. If an army guy comes in and says we need to lock down the country for weeks to stop this terrorist attack, we would never have agreed to this. A politician comes out and says crazy things, we wouldn't agree to it. But suddenly they come out with a doctor's coat on, and they're like, "Yeah, we need to shut down the economy for a year." Like, first off, if these doctors had said that a year ago, no one would have done any of this.
Well, it's extra constitutional powers, so let's go.
Yeah. Well, in your
I just
country,
find it
that's
odd that it's
constitutional. Mine
all
is
over the world.
perfectly. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that?
I'm just kind of surprised that it's not just us; it's all over. Like all the countries are doing it. It's just weird.
Well, I
Yeah.
watched. There's a radio talk show / YouTube show in England called Talk Radio, and they bring on people. And there have been holding people a bit more to account than the British have been much better on arguing with their politicians than we have. And they had their health minister came on and was talking to like this one woman who is like the British Laura Ingraham, I guess would be a good comparison. She's just talking to him and is like, so why are we doing this curfew? And it's like, well, other countries are doing it. And you had the look on her face of like someone about to say something to like, what are you, 5? And she's like, so what you're telling me is we're instituting a lockdown because all the other countries are doing it. So if all the other countries were jumping off a bridge, would we jump off a bridge? And she yelled at that. That was their health minister.
Good. What are you, like 6?
Yeah, it's like, well, that's the answer you give to a 5-year-old. A parent says to a 5-year-old, like, what? Everyone else is doing it. Like, what? That's your answer? That's not based on science. Like, our provincial government just passed a whole bunch of things saying you can't do this, go into the store. You shouldn't be going to the store and buy these things. And it's like, who is lollygagging around the toy aisle, spreading COVID? You're just desperate because in the end, you've done all you can. But you don't want to come out and admit to the public, there's nothing more we can do. We've done everything. Yeah. People are just going to unfortunately suffer and die because, it's the virus and we can't stop that.
Well, apparently the number of deaths due to the virus is roughly equivalent to the number of deaths due to medical mistakes.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah. That sounds about right.
It puts things in perspectives, I think. You stand just as much chance of dying from the COVID as you do from a doctor. So I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
You had yourself on mute there for a moment.
Me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Bishop.
Well, I feel we've been taking up a lot of the conversation on me and Don. Is there anything you want to ask us about maybe there?
Breaking up.
Oh, sorry. I said, do you have any questions for me and Don? Maybe we give you something.
No. I did appreciate you pulling together the interview a few weeks ago with Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Still don't fully agree with everything, but at least getting to hear that was refreshing.
Yeah, getting a behind the scenes look on things, and we'll be bringing back Scott in the future when it's appropriate, kind of thing.
When things calm down. Hey, is there anybody you'd like to see on the show? Who'd you like to hear from?
I have to think about that. I'll get back to you, but because I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, it used to be the old question I would ask everyone when they came on. So maybe I'll go through some of the older questions we used to ask. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kansas, in a very small farm little town, up on the Nebraska border.
How was were you always a conservative, or did you have a wild liberal streak in you when you were younger?
Kind of always a conservative. Actually, I was more of a Republican because my parents were. And then, went off to college, and my suite mate was listening to Rush, and he said, "Hey, you got to come listen to this." And I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty much what I was thinking at the same time." So it wasn't like a big changeover, big revelation, but I got to hear Rush. Did have an interesting story with that. I had actually the campus paper, the first semester I was there, he was still doing his Rush to Excellence tours and had visited the campus, but I had no idea who the guy was or like. But then, the next semester when my friend introduced me, I was like, oh, wow, he would have been here. I could have seen him. But, and then like a year or two later, they started doing the Rush rooms. If you remember those, but restaurants would pipe in Rush during the lunch hour. You could sit there and eat. And there was a bowling alley that did.
Never heard of that.
Oh yeah, they were a thing for a while. Store or restaurants would pipe in Rush over the rush or the lunch hour.
That wouldn't happen here.
No. But this bowling alley, they did a rush hour special. So for like 3 hours for some small amount of money, you could bowl and eat all the pizza at their pizza buffet. And it was only once a week. It was like every, I think, Thursday. And my sweet mate and I, we would do that every week. Because he was a bowler, and so we would go bowling and listen to Rush, and then that's about the time he started doing his TV show as well. And so then the radio station was doing a promotion where they were going to pay for a trip to New York to put you up, you and a friend. And so we would register every week at the bowling event. And my friend had this really far lefty friend, and he convinced him. He's like, come on, let's just go bowling. Yes, we're listening to Rush, and on a lark, he entered his name. And of course, weeks later, he was the one drawn.
Oh.
Yeah. So he took his mom, and they went to New York and got put up in a nice hotel, and they actually got to see Rush and meet him because the handlers or whatever came up and said, hey, here's this radio contestant winner. And so, but I actually, when he came back, he gave the 2 tickets to my friend and I. So I actually have a ticket to Rush Limbaugh's TV show somewhere in some box in my garage. But yeah, he was nice enough to do that.
Cool. I think my first real Rush experience was the 2009 CPAC speech.
Oh yeah.
Where like I was just getting kind of into more like American conservatism because I did not like George W. Bush for a whole bunch of reasons I won't go into. But and so I was kind of on McCain camp, but I knew Obama was going to win because just had been watching the whole process. And when so everyone, here you go. Obama's got himself a supermajority in the Senate. He's got the Congress. He's the president. He's going to do all these things. And everyone's kind of feeling pretty low and like, is conservatism dead? Is it gone? And then Rush comes in and gives that speech. And it's just like fired everyone up in a way that like was great.
Yeah. That was a good one.
And was it so did you have any crazy interesting things happen when you were in the Air Force?
Any pranks?
Well, it's not a crazy one, but officer training, it's kind of mild, but at our officer training school, it's located at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. And there's a federal penitentiary located on the base. I'm not sure. I think it's, kind of blue collar, it's not, your heavy maximum security. And they have the prisoners doing some of the yard work around base. And, as we're going between classes, we have to march in formation, and someone has to be the leader of the day and leading us around. And they're kind of focused on marching us and making sure we're not running off in the ditch or something. And so to help them out, if there's any commissioned officers, we got to be able to salute them right away, as the guy in charge does it for the whole fleet or the whole troop. And so we kind of watch out to give the guy a heads up. And so he's like, one day, this one little guy, he's marching us around, and someone decides that there's these 2 prisoners doing yard work up ahead. And so we someone yells, "Hey, it's Tracy. There's an officer coming up ahead." So he turns around, he pops off this salute, and these two prisoners just like, "What are you doing?" And then he was so mad at us. Once we got back into the classroom, he just yelling at us. But that was fun, getting a guy to salute prisoners.
Okay, well, I think that's a great way to end this a particular episode, and hearing from you in that way. So we'll
End it with a prank.
Yeah, with a prank. I think that's a great way to end the show. So why don't we say bye-bye, and maybe Don will send me a picture of a certain sock puppet, or unless you want me to go with the Bishop Wash avatar.
I think he needs a Bishop
I
hat.
can send you that one. Oh yeah, I don't have any good Photoshop skills.
I can find a decent Bishop's hat, so we can put that one down.
That'd be great.
That's what you want.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's been a good show for us. I like the fact that we're starting to get back and doing member interviews again and getting away from all the other stuff that's been going on. So it's for Land of Confusion, I'm signing off. See you guys.
Take care. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.